Every morning I wake up at the crack of dawn, the first light of day barely touching the sky. The alarm clock buzzes softly at 5:30 a.m., and I slip out of bed quietly so as not to disturb Lauren. She lies there peacefully, her chest rising and falling with each breath, a serene picture of the woman I fell in love with. The house is silent as I pad down the hallway. The only sound is the faint creak of the wooden floorboards beneath my feet. I head straight to the kitchen, flicking on the light and basking in the warm glow. This is my sanctuary, where I can take my time to create something special for Lauren every morning. Cooking for her is a ritual, one that I cherish deeply. It's a small act, but it's my way of showing her how much I care. I start by brewing a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen and waking me up fully. Lauren loves her coffee with a splash of almond milk and a hint of cinnamon, a combination that has become as familiar to me as my name. As the coffee brews, I move on to preparing breakfast. Today, it's going to be her favorite. Avocado toast with a poached egg, cherry tomatoes, and a sprinkle of feta cheese. I carefully slice the avocados, mashing them into a creamy spread while humming a tune. The bread goes into the toaster, and I set a pot of water to boil for the eggs. Every movement is deliberate, almost meditative. It's in these moments of solitude that I find peace, knowing that soon I will see her smile as she takes her first bite. By the time everything was ready, the sun had started to rise, casting a golden hue across the kitchen. I arranged the toast artfully on a plate, garnishing it with a sprig of parsley for an extra touch of color. The coffee is poured into her favorite mug, the one with the little bluebirds she adores. I carry the tray back to our bedroom, nudging the door open with my shoulder. Lauren is just beginning to stir, her eyes fluttering open as she senses my presence. "Good morning, sweetheart," I say softly, placing the tray on the bedside table. Her face lights up with a smile, and it's moments like this that make everything worthwhile. "Morning, Jack," she replies, her voice still heavy with sleep. She sits up, stretching and yawning before reaching for the coffee. "You're too good to me." I laugh, brushing a kiss on her forehead. "Only the best for you." I sit beside her, watching as she takes her first sip of coffee, her eyes closing in contentment. We talk about our plans for the day, sharing the small details of our lives that keep us connected. This morning routine has been our anchor, a way to start each day with love and togetherness. It's a ritual that has strengthened our bond over the years, a testament to our commitment to each other. As we finish breakfast, I can't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. No matter what the day brings, we always have these moments to remind us of what truly matters. It all started a few months ago. Lauren came home one evening, her face aglow with excitement. She had stumbled upon a flyer for outdoor yoga classes in the local park, and she couldn't wait to give it a try. "I've always wanted to do yoga," she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I think it'll be great for my stress and help me find some inner balance." I remember smiling at her, happy to see her so excited about something new. "That sounds wonderful, honey," I replied. "You've been working so hard lately. You deserve to do something just for you." The next Saturday, she rolled up her brand new yoga mat and set off for her first class. I watched her leave feeling a mix of pride and curiosity. Lauren had always been so dedicated to her job and our family, often putting others before herself. It was good to see her taking some time for her well-being. When she returned, she was practically glowing. "It was amazing, Jack," she gushed, her cheeks flushed from the exercise and the fresh air. "The instructor, Brian, is fantastic. He has this calming presence, and he knows how to guide everyone through the poses, and the park is just beautiful in the morning." I listened as she recounted every detail, from the way the sun filtered through the trees to the feeling of the grass under her feet during Savasana. It was clear that she had found something special, something that brought her joy and peace. Over the next few weeks, yoga became a regular part of Lauren's routine. Every Saturday morning, she would head to the park with her mat in hand, ready to start her weekend with a dose of tranquility. As the weeks passed, I noticed changes in her. She seemed more relaxed and more centered. The stresses of her job didn't weigh on her as heavily, and she had a newfound energy that was contagious. Our conversations over breakfast often revolved around her latest yoga sessions, and I loved hearing her talk about the new poses she had mastered or the interesting people she had met in the class. On Saturday, she invited me to come and watch. "You should see it, Jack. It's such a beautiful experience. Maybe you'll even want to join in one day." I agreed, curious to see what had captivated her so completely. We arrived at the park, and I found a spot on a nearby bench where I could observe without intruding. Lauren unrolled her mat and took her place among the other participants, her face serene and focused. Brian, the instructor, began the class with a few gentle stretches, his voice calm and soothing. I could see why Lauren spoke so highly of him. He had a way of making everyone feel at ease, encouraging them to find their own pace and listen to their bodies. As I watched, I felt a sense of pride and admiration for Lauren. She was graceful and strong, moving through the poses with quiet confidence. It was clear that yoga had become more than just a hobby for her. It was a source of inner peace and strength. After the class, Lauren joined me on the bench, her face glowing with happiness. "What did you think?" she asked, her eyes shining. "It was beautiful," I replied honestly. "I can see why you love it so much." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad you came. It means a lot to me." In the following months, Lauren's passion for yoga only grew. She started attending more classes, sometimes even going during the week after work. She bought books on yoga philosophy and began practicing meditation at home. It was as if she had unlocked a new part of herself, one that was deeply connected to a sense of inner peace and balance. Watching her transformation was inspiring. Lauren had always been a strong and resilient woman, but yoga had given her a new sense of calm and clarity. It had become a vital part of her life, and in turn, it brought a new dimension to our relationship. We found ourselves talking more about our personal growth, our dreams, and the things that brought us joy. Little did I know, this new interest of hers would soon lead to changes I couldn't have anticipated, changes that would test the very foundation of our marriage. Lauren's enthusiasm for her yoga classes was infectious. She would come home brimming with stories about the sessions, often focusing on her instructor, Brian. "Brian is incredible," she would say, her eyes lighting up. "He has this way of explaining things that makes everything so clear, and his energy is just so calming." At first, I didn't think much of it. I was happy that Lauren had found something she was passionate about, and that she had a good teacher to guide her. After all, a good instructor can make all the difference when you're learning something new. However, as the weeks went by, I noticed that Brian's name came up more and more frequently in our conversations. One evening, Lauren came home with a new story. "You won't believe what Brian taught us today," she began, excitement coloring her voice. "We did this amazing sequence that combined balance and strength. He said I have a natural talent for it." She beamed at me, clearly proud of herself. "That's great, honey," I replied, smiling back. "It sounds like you're getting the hang of it." "He's just so inspiring," she continued, not picking up on the slight unease I felt. "He makes me want to push myself further and explore what I'm capable of." I tried to share in her excitement, but a small part of me couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. I pushed the feeling aside, reminding myself that it was irrational. Brian was just her yoga instructor, nothing more. A few weeks later, Lauren invited me to come to a special evening yoga session in the park. "Brian is doing a sunset class, and it's supposed to be beautiful," she explained. "I think you'd enjoy it." I agreed, curious to meet the man who had made such an impression on my wife. We arrived at the park just as the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over everything. Lauren introduced me to Brian, a tall, fit man with a friendly smile and an easygoing demeanor. "It's great to meet you, Jack," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Lauren has told me a lot about you." "Nice to meet you too, Brian," I replied, trying to sound as amiable as possible. "She speaks very highly of you." Brian laughed modestly. "I'm just happy to help people find some peace and balance in their lives. Lauren is a wonderful student. She's very dedicated." The class began, and I watched from the sidelines as Brian led the group through a series of poses and stretches. His voice was calm and encouraging, guiding everyone with a gentle authority. It was clear that he was very good at what he did, and I could see why Lauren admired him so much. After the class, Lauren and I walked home together, and the evening air was cool and refreshing. "What did you think?" she asked, looking at me with hopeful eyes. "He seems like a great instructor," I said honestly. "I can see why you enjoy his classes so much." "I knew you'd like him," she replied, squeezing my hand. "He's just got this way of making everything seem possible, you know?" As the months went by, Brian's influence on Lauren grew. She started attending more of his classes, sometimes even doubling up on weekends. She would come home and excitedly recount the new techniques and philosophies she had learned, always mentioning Brian's insights and guidance. "He's opened my eyes to so much," she told me one evening over dinner. "Not just about yoga, but about life. He talks a lot about mindfulness and being present in the moment. It's helped me manage my stress and feel more connected to everything around me." I listened, trying to be supportive, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. It wasn't just that she talked about Brian so much, it was the way she talked about him. There was a warmth and admiration in her voice that went beyond simple respect for a teacher. One Saturday, I decided to surprise Lauren by showing up at the park after her class. I arrived just as the session was ending and saw her talking animatedly with Brian, her face alight with happiness. He was laughing at something she said, and they seemed to be in their little world. I felt a tightening in my chest as I watched them. It was a feeling I couldn't quite define, part jealousy, part fear, part sadness. I trusted Lauren, but I couldn't deny that seeing her like this with another man stirred something deep inside me. I approached them, forcing a smile. "Hey, you two," I called out, trying to sound casual. "Thought I'd come and see how the class went." Lauren's face lit up when she saw me. "Jack, what a nice surprise." She gave me a quick hug before turning back to Brian. "Brian, this is my husband, Jack. Jack, this is Brian." "We've met before," Brian said with a friendly grin. "It's good to see you again, Jack." "Likewise," I replied, shaking his hand. "I thought I'd come and see what all the fuss is about." Brian laughed. "You should join us for a class sometime. It's a great way to unwind and connect with your body." "Maybe I will," I said, though the idea didn't particularly appeal to me. I was more interested in understanding the dynamic between Brian and Lauren, and whether my growing concerns were warranted. As we walked home, Lauren chatted excitedly about the class and the new things she had learned. I tried to focus on her words, but my mind kept drifting back to the scene I'd witnessed. I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to their relationship than met the eye. Over the next few weeks, I kept a closer eye on things, looking for signs that my fears were justified. Lauren continued to attend Brian's classes regularly, and while she seemed happier and more relaxed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, I decided to broach the subject. "Lauren, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Of course," she replied, looking up from her book. "What's on your mind?" "It's about your yoga classes," I began, choosing my words carefully. "You've been spending a lot of time with Brian. I just want to make sure everything's okay." She looked at me, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Jack, there's nothing to worry about. Brian is just my instructor. He's helped me a lot with my practice, and I appreciate his guidance. But that's all it is." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and lingering doubt. "I trust you, Lauren. I just want to make sure we're on the same page." "We are," she said firmly, taking my hand. "You're the most important person in my life, Jack. Yoga has been great for me, but it doesn't change how I feel about you." I squeezed her hand, trying to let her words sink in. "Okay," I said finally. "I believe you." But even as I said the words, a small part of me couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story. Each day, Lauren returned home more animated and cheerful after her yoga classes. She often spoke about the new friends she had made in her classes. "You wouldn't believe how amazing the people are," she would say, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Everyone is so supportive and encouraging. It's like I've found this whole new community." Lauren mentioned Alice, who ran a small bakery, and Mike, a schoolteacher who had taken up yoga to manage his back pain. "Alice and Mike are just the sweetest," Lauren told me one evening. "Alice has this infectious laugh, and Mike is always so positive, even when he's struggling with a pose." I smiled, happy to see her so engaged. "It sounds like you found a great group, Lauren. I'm glad you're enjoying it so much." She beamed at me, her happiness evident. "I have, Jack. It's just what I needed." As the weeks passed, Lauren began to spend more time with her new friends outside of class. She would meet Alice for coffee, join Mike and others for a group hike, or attend a potluck dinner organized by Brian. Each time, she would come home brimming with stories and laughter. One Saturday evening, after a particularly long yoga session followed by a picnic in the park, she came home later than usual. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized, her eyes shining. "We ended up staying longer than planned. Everyone brought such delicious food, and we just lost track of time. I tried to hide my unease. It's okay, Lauren. I'm glad you had a good time. She sat down beside me. I want you to meet them, Jack. Maybe you could join us for one of our potlucks or hikes. I nodded. Sure, that sounds great. I'd love to meet your new friends. A week later, I found myself at one of their potlucks. Alice greeted me with a warm hug, and Mike was equally welcoming. Then there was Brian, ever the charming instructor. As the evening wore on, I began to understand why Lauren enjoyed their company so much. They were a lively, supportive group, each person bringing their unique energy. I found myself relaxing, even enjoying the evening despite my initial reservations. But as I watched Lauren interact with her friends, especially Brian, I couldn't help but notice the way she lit up around them. There was a camaraderie between them, a shared passion for yoga that I couldn't fully grasp. On the way home, Lauren was effusive. Wasn't that fun? I'm so glad you came, Jack. It was great, I agreed. You have some wonderful friends, Lauren. She smiled, squeezing my hand. Thank you for being so supportive. It means a lot to me. In the following weeks, her social calendar filled up even more. There were yoga workshops, meditation retreats, and casual get-togethers with her new friends. Each event seemed to bring her more joy and fulfillment, and I was glad for her, even as I felt a growing unease. One evening, while catching up with my friend Josh over a couple of beers, he brought up something that caught me off guard. We were sitting on my back porch, the twilight casting long shadows over the yard, when he hesitated for a moment before speaking. Jack, there's something I feel I should mention, Josh began, looking somewhat uncomfortable. It's about Lauren and her yoga instructor, Brian. I raised an eyebrow, curious but not yet alarmed. What about them? Josh took a deep breath. I've noticed that Lauren and Brian spend a lot of time together after yoga classes. I've seen them a few times, and they seem close. A knot started to form in my stomach, but I tried to brush it off. They're just friends, Josh. You know how it is with these classes. People bond over shared interests. Josh nodded slowly. I get that, Jack, but it's not just the classes. I saw them at the coffee shop the other day and another time at the park. They looked pretty cozy. I couldn't ignore the growing unease inside me. What exactly are you saying, Josh? He looked me in the eye, his expression serious. I'm just saying you should keep an eye on it. It might be nothing, but better safe than sorry, right? I nodded, trying to hide my concern. Thanks for looking out for me, Josh. You'll pay attention. That night, I found it hard to sleep. Josh's words echoed in my mind, mingling with the memories of how animated Lauren had become since starting yoga. I couldn't help but think back to all the times she mentioned Brian with admiration. Was there something more going on, or was I just being paranoid? The next morning, I watched Lauren closely as she prepared for her yoga class. She seemed genuinely happy and relaxed, completely unaware of my growing suspicions. I wanted to believe there was nothing to worry about, but Josh's observations lingered in the back of my mind. As she left for the park, I decided to follow her, just to see for myself. I felt a pang of guilt for doubting her, but I needed to know the truth. Keeping a safe distance, I watched as she joined the class, greeted Brian with a warm smile, and took her place on the mat. After the class ended, I saw them talking and laughing together. They seemed to have an easy rapport, but nothing overtly inappropriate. Still, the closeness between them was undeniable. When Lauren returned home later that day, I tried to act normal. How was yoga? I asked, forcing a casual tone. It was great, she replied, her eyes shining with happiness. Brian introduced us to some new poses, and we had a lovely time chatting afterward. I nodded, my heart heavy with uncertainty. I'm glad you're enjoying it. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I watched for any signs, any hints that might confirm or dispel my fears. Lauren continued to attend her classes, coming home more content and relaxed each time, while I struggled with my growing doubts. Josh's observations had planted a seed of suspicion that I couldn't ignore, and I knew I had to confront it sooner or later. But for now, I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, hoping against hope that my worries were unfounded. I began to notice subtle changes in Lauren's behavior that fueled my growing unease. At first, it was small things that were easy to dismiss. She became more secretive, often taking her phone with her everywhere and spending more time on it, even during moments we used to share. Lauren also started to linger longer at her yoga classes. She used to come home promptly, eager to tell me about her day and the new poses she had mastered. But now, she often returned much later than expected, her explanations vague and unconvincing. One evening, I decided to casually ask her about it. "You've been staying late at yoga a lot recently. Everything okay?" She looked up from her phone, her expression guarded. "Yeah, everything's fine. Sometimes we just get caught up in conversations after class. Brian likes to give us extra tips and advice." I nodded, trying to appear nonchalant. "I see. It's just that you seem to be spending a lot more time on your phone, too." Lauren shrugged, her eyes flickering with a hint of annoyance. "I'm just keeping up with friends, Jack. It's nothing to worry about." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Her laughter seemed forced, and there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. The closeness we once shared felt like it was slipping away, replaced by an unsettling sense of secrecy. Late at night, I would lie awake, my mind racing with thoughts and suspicions. I replayed conversations in my head, scrutinizing every detail for clues. Was I overreacting, letting my imagination run wild? Or was there something real behind my fears? One day I noticed Lauren texting rapidly on her phone, a slight smile playing on her lips. When she saw me watching, she quickly put the phone down, her smile fading. "Just talking to Alice," she said too quickly. "That's nice," I replied, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. As the days turned into weeks, my anxiety grew. I started to feel like an outsider in my own home, constantly second-guessing Lauren's actions and questioning my sanity. The doubt gnawed at me, eroding the trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship. I tried to focus on work, hobbies, and anything to distract myself from the growing rift. But no matter what I did, the thoughts kept creeping back in. What if Josh was right? What if there was something more going on between Lauren and Brian? I knew I needed to address it, to find a way to confront my fears and get to the bottom of things. But how could I do that without driving a wedge further between us? The thought of losing Lauren was unbearable, yet the uncertainty was eating me alive. Each day became a struggle to maintain normalcy, to act as if everything was fine while my heart was heavy with suspicion. I watched Lauren closely, searching for any sign, any hint that might confirm or dispel my doubts. The tension between us grew, an unspoken barrier that neither of us could cross. In the midst of all this, I realized that I needed to have a real conversation with Lauren, to voice my concerns and try to understand what was happening. It was the only way to find the truth, to either put my fears to rest or face the reality of our changing relationship. But for now, I continued to live in a state of anxious uncertainty, hoping that my suspicions were just that, unfounded worries fueled by insecurity and doubt. Yet deep down, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was very wrong. One evening, as Lauren was taking a long shower after her yoga class, I found myself grappling with the same anxiety that had been gnawing at me for weeks. Her behavior, the secrecy, and Josh's observations had all converged into a heavy weight of suspicion that I could no longer ignore. My doubts had been simmering for too long, and I needed answers. With a trembling hand, I decided to check her phone. I knew it was a breach of trust, but the urgency of my fears compelled me. Lauren's phone was charging on the kitchen counter, and as I glanced at the closed bathroom door, I took a deep breath and reached for it. I unlocked her phone, the familiar pattern coming to me with surprising ease. Navigating to her messaging app, I scanned through her conversations, trying to calm the racing of my heart. Then there it was, a thread of messages with Brian. My hands shook as I read through their exchange. The messages were filled with casual, friendly banter at first, discussing everyday topics like the weather and upcoming yoga classes. But as I scrolled further, my heart sank. The tone shifted to more personal and intimate conversations. Brian: "Looking forward to our session tomorrow. Got some new poses I think you'll love." Lauren: "Can't wait. I always feel so much better after our classes. Maybe we could grab coffee afterward?" Brian: "Sounds perfect. We should also talk about the upcoming retreat. I think it could be a great opportunity for both of us." Lauren: "Absolutely. I'm excited about it. Let's plan for it over coffee. I'll text you after the class." The messages continued, discussing future meetings and shared plans. They talked about their excitement for an upcoming retreat, discussing it with an intimacy that suggested a level of closeness beyond mere friendship. As I read through their conversation, A cold realization set in. They had been spending a lot of time together outside of class, making plans and sharing personal moments. The connection between them was far deeper than I had initially suspected. It was clear that their relationship was more than just a professional or friendly bond. The shock of the discovery left me feeling numb. I put the phone back on the counter, my mind racing with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and sadness. I had uncovered the truth I had been dreading, and now I faced the harsh reality of it. When Lauren emerged from the shower, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly ahead. She noticed my troubled expression immediately. "Jack, what's wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, struggling to maintain my composure. "We need to talk." Lauren's face fell, sensing the gravity of the situation. "What is it?" I stood up, my voice steady but filled with hurt. "I checked your phone. I saw the messages between you and Brian." Her expression shifted to one of shock and guilt. "Jack, I can explain." I held up my hand, needing her to understand the depth of my pain. "I don't need an explanation right now. I need to know where we stand." The room fell into a heavy silence as Lauren's eyes filled with tears. The reality of our situation was now undeniable, and the weight of the revelation hung heavily between us. The trust we had once built was shattered, and our relationship faced its most challenging test yet. The path forward was uncertain, and the choices we made from this point on would determine the future of our marriage. My heart pounded as I faced Lauren in the kitchen. The discovery of her messages with Brian had shattered any remaining sense of security I had. The anger and hurt bubbling inside me made it impossible to stay silent. I knew I had to confront her, to demand the truth. "Lauren," I began, my voice rough with emotion, "I saw the messages between you and Brian. I need you to be honest with me. What's going on?" Her face paled as she absorbed the weight of my words. For a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights, but then her shoulders slumped in resignation. "Jack, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out this way." I felt a surge of anger. "So it's true then? There's been something going on between you and Brian?" Lauren nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "Yes, Jack. We've been seeing each other. It started out as just friends, but it became more. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did." I struggled to contain my fury. "How could you do this to us, Lauren, to me? Everything we had, everything we built together, was it all meaningless?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It wasn't meaningless. I love you, Jack, but I've been feeling lost lately. I wanted something new, something different. Brian made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time." Her words cut through me like a knife. I felt a profound sense of betrayal. "So this was about finding something new. What about our life together? Did it mean nothing to you?" Lauren's voice trembled as she tried to explain. "It's not that it meant nothing. It's just that I was searching for something I couldn't find in myself or our routine. Brian offered a different perspective, a different kind of excitement." I shook my head, struggling to process her explanation. "And did you think about how this would affect me? How it would affect us? This isn't just about finding yourself. It's about breaking the trust we had." Tears streamed down her face as she took a step toward me. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could handle it, that it wouldn't go beyond just a few meetings. But it did, and I didn't know how to stop it." Her remorse was palpable, but it did little to ease the pain I felt. "So, what now? What do we do from here?" Lauren's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know. I want to make things right, Jack. I want to work through this if you're willing." I looked at her, my mind racing. The betrayal was fresh and raw, and I was torn between the desire to hold on to the life we had and the need to protect myself from further hurt. "I need time to think," I said finally, my voice heavy with emotion. "I can't make any decisions right now. I need to process this and figure out what's next for me." Lauren nodded, her face etched with sorrow. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, ready to do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll give me the chance." As I walked away from her, the weight of the confrontation hung heavily on my shoulders. The future of our relationship seemed uncertain, and the path ahead was fraught with challenges. The confrontation had unveiled the raw truth, and now I faced the daunting task of deciding whether to rebuild the trust that had been so deeply damaged or to walk away from the relationship I had once cherished. The days following our confrontation were filled with heavy silence. Lauren and I spent most of our time apart, each of us lost in our thoughts as we tried to make sense of the turmoil that had engulfed our lives. The weight of betrayal hung over us, casting a shadow over everything we had once shared. After a long emotional discussion, we reached a decision. We agreed that a break was necessary, a period of separation to reflect on what we truly valued and what we wanted from our lives moving forward. It was a difficult choice, but it seemed the only way to gain clarity and determine the future of our relationship. The first few days of our separation were a whirlwind of emotions. I found myself wandering through the house, which now felt eerily quiet and empty. Every corner seemed to echo with the memories of better times. I tried to keep myself busy, diving into work and spending time with friends who were sympathetic, but mostly at a loss for how to help. Lauren, too, seemed to be struggling with the sudden change. We had agreed to avoid contact during this period, giving each other the space needed to reflect. She spent time with her yoga community, seeking solace in the familiar routine of her classes and the support of her friends. Despite our decision to stay apart, there were moments when I caught myself longing for a glimpse of normalcy. I missed the easy conversations we used to have, the simple companionship that had once defined our relationship. The absence of Lauren's presence in my daily life was a stark reminder of the trust that had been broken. During this time, I began to reflect on our relationship with a new perspective. I realized that our routine, while comforting, had become a trap of predictability. I had taken for granted the moments of connection that had once brought us joy. At the same time, I wrestled with the pain of betrayal and the uncertainty of whether it was possible to rebuild what had been lost. Lauren, in her way, was confronting her feelings as well. The time away from me gave her an opportunity to examine her actions and the reasons behind them. She sought advice from close friends and reflected on the impact of her choices on our marriage. As the end of our agreed separation approached, I felt a mixture of apprehension and hope. We had both agreed to use this time to gain insight into our desires and needs, and now it was time to face each other again and discuss our findings. On the day we were scheduled to meet, I was nervous but resolute. I had spent days considering what was most important to me and what I wanted from our relationship moving forward. I hoped that our time apart would provide us with the clarity we needed to decide our future. When we sat down to talk, the conversation was open and honest. We shared our reflections, our hopes, and our fears. Lauren expressed her remorse and her desire to work through the issues that had led to our crisis. I conveyed my pain and the difficulty of trusting again, but also acknowledged the possibility of rebuilding our relationship if we could address the underlying issues. In the end, we decided to give our relationship another chance, but with the understanding that it would require effort, transparency, and a renewed commitment to each other. We agreed to seek couples counseling to help us navigate the challenges ahead and to work on rebuilding the trust that had been so profoundly damaged. The decision to try again was both hopeful and daunting. We knew that the road to recovery would be long and fraught with difficulties, but we were willing to face it together. The consequences of our choices would unfold over time, and we were prepared to confront them with honesty and determination. As we embarked on this new chapter, we held on to the hope that our time apart had given us the perspective needed to strengthen our bond and create a future that honored both our past and our aspirations. As the dust began to settle from our tumultuous period, Lauren and I took our first tentative steps toward rebuilding our lives together. The decision to give our relationship another chance was both a relief and a challenge. We knew that repairing what had been broken would take time, patience, and a commitment to change. We both started by focusing on ourselves individually. For me, this meant reflecting deeply on my feelings, understanding the root of my insecurities, and working to address them. I began attending therapy sessions to navigate the emotional aftermath of our situation and to gain a clearer perspective on my own needs and boundaries. This self-discovery was both painful and enlightening, offering insights into how I had contributed to the patterns in our relationship. Lauren, too, embarked on her journey of self-improvement. She continued her yoga practice, finding solace and strength in the routines that had once brought her so much joy. Yoga became more than just a physical exercise for her. It became a means of reconnecting with herself and addressing the internal struggles that had led to her choices. Additionally, Lauren started attending individual counseling to explore the reasons behind her actions, and to work on her personal growth. Our counseling sessions as a couple began shortly after we resumed contact. They were initially uncomfortable, filled with raw emotions and difficult conversations. Yet they provided us with a structured environment to address the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface. With the guidance of our therapist, we learned to communicate more effectively, to express our feelings without blame, and to listen with empathy. In these sessions, we also explored the dynamics of our relationship and how we could create a healthier, more fulfilling connection. We set goals for ourselves and our relationship, focusing on rebuilding trust, improving communication, and fostering mutual respect. Our interactions with each other slowly began to change. The conversations that had once been laced with tension and resentment started to include more understanding and compassion. We made a conscious effort to spend quality time together, doing activities we both enjoyed and creating new memories. Whether it was cooking dinner together, going for long walks, or simply sitting and talking without distractions, these moments helped us reconnect and rediscover the bond that had once been so strong. As we navigated this new path, we both recognized that the journey was far from over. There would be setbacks and moments of doubt, but we were committed to facing them together. The experience had taught us valuable lessons about ourselves and each other, and we were determined to apply these lessons as we moved forward. Regardless of how our future unfolds, the time apart and the efforts we put into our individual and joint growth have already made a significant impact. We learned the importance of self-awareness, the value of honest communication, and the necessity of addressing issues before they fester. Our renewed commitment to each other was not about erasing the past, but about building a future where we could grow together, learn from our mistakes, and support each other. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was paved with hope, understanding, and a deepened appreciation for the complexities of love and relationships. In the end, the experience transformed us both, giving us a newfound perspective on what it means to truly connect and support one another. As we continued on our journey together, we were guided by the lessons we had learned and the strength we had found in each other.